1721, Boston, Massachusetts experienced a deadly outbreak of smallpox. What began with one infected sailor eventually grew to the point where half the population became infected and over 800 people died. Cotton Mather, the famous Puritan writer and minister of Boston's North Church, saw it as his spiritual duty to care for the physical well-being of the city that he was born and raised in. Mather himself was interested in science. In 1716, he published his pioneering work on plant hybridization. Mather soon found a solution from an African man named Onesimus, who told him that he had been inoculated against smallpox as a child back in Africa. After doing further research, he found the practice of inoculation was widely practiced throughout parts of Africa in the Turkish Empire. Cotton Mather began to push for the practice to be adopted in Boston to stop the plague. He was first opposed by the majority of physicians, who ignored his letters and publicly denounced the practice as uncommon and dangerous. He was then attacked by many of the other pastors and ministers of the city, who wrote that smallpox was undoubtedly sent by God as a punishment for sin, and that Mather was attempting to take God's work into his own hands through the practice of inoculation. Cotton Mather and the small group of ministers who supported him were slandered in the local newspapers. They were mockingly referred to as the inoculation ministers and were called a danger to society and people who should be stopped by force if necessary. These attacks soon turned to violence. On the 14th of November, 1721, a lighted gunpowder bomb was thrown through the window of Mather's home, but thankfully it failed to explode. Cotton Mather continued with his quest, and only with the help of one doctor, they managed to inoculate 287 people. When the epidemic finally came to an end in 1722, it was found that the death rate amongst those who had not been inoculated was 1 in 6. Whilst the death rate amongst those who had been inoculated was only 1 in 40. Once these results were widely known, Mather was vindicated in his work and was elected as a member to the Royal Society in London 2 years later. Though he was fiercely opposed at the time, Cotton Mather is remembered today as one of the people who laid the foundation for the development of the smallpox vaccine in 1796 and the worldwide eradication of smallpox in 1977.